Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We made it to another Friday. This is your Friday, March 6th edition of the Quick Breaks NBA DFS podcast brought to you by the good guys over at Fantasy Degens. As always, Sean Mitchell here. Hopefully you guys have been having a wonderful Friday. You can find me at smitchell17 on the Twitter machine. 10 games for tonight. Nice big slate to get our weekend kicked off. Some pretty good matchups, a lot of good plays. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing kicked off. We got some really good games. Game number one, we'll start right off with a bang. We'll go with the Hawks going into Washington to take on the Wizards. 2.5. Home favorite here for the Wizards. 245.5 on the total. Going to be your highest total game by quite a bit, and for good reason. You know, Atlanta fifth fastest team over the last 10 games. Washington the second. Two very very fast teams and two teams that do not play a lot of defense. This game could easily get up into the 280s, 300s maybe. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if both of these teams scored, 130 to 135 points. It's just one of those games where you just kind of got to play it. There's going to be a lot of chalk in there, obviously, but yeah, you just gotta you gotta play the high usage guys on those two teams and stack that game up. Game number two, Spurs at the Nets. We do not have a line, do not have a total. Obviously, I don't really know what we're waiting on. Looks like LaMarcus Aldridge has already been ruled out. Jakob Poeltl is still out. Really not sure what they're waiting on. Garrett Temple's questionable is the only net that I can see that is of value. So I'm not really sure why there's no line or total on this game. Nonetheless, San Antonio running with the 23rd fastest pace over their last 10 games, and the Nets are running with the 25th. So two pretty slow teams. Not just a whole lot to like in this game, in my opinion. Game number three, Thunder at the Knicks. OKC minus 6.5 here on the road. 217.5 on the total. Oklahoma City coming in as the 21st fastest team over their last 10 games. New York Knicks are 24th. Lower total. Concentrated game. Only like a few plays. Think there's a couple plays in there you can go with. We'll talk about here in a little bit. Game number four, Jazz at the Celtics. There is no line on this game simply because looks like Jaylen Brown's out. Looks like Gordon Hayward is out. Don't really know the status of Kemba Walker at the moment. I know he sat last game. I believe he will play. I'm assuming he will probably be on somewhat of a minutes limit again. He only saw 25-ish minutes, I think, last game. So something to keep in mind. Utah 27th fastest over their last 10 games. Boston is 20th. Neither team exactly particularly fast. Obviously, Utah has fallen back into that same kind of realm that they were in last year, where they were pretty slow all year. Started the year off pretty fast, and now they're kind of reverting back to their old ways. Boston has kind of been up in the mid-teens in terms of pace, so it could be a decent pace-up spot here for Utah, but I'm not really going to call it that. Nonetheless, obviously there's going to be value in this game. You have a lot of guys out for the Celtics. Game number five, we have the Heat going into New Orleans to take on the Pelicans. We only have a 1.5 point home favorite here for the Pelicans. 235.5 on the total. Miami coming in as the 19th fastest team over their last 10 games. Pelicans, of course, are the third. Very fast team. Really big pace-up spot here for Miami. And nice big total on that game, of course. That's going to be one of the games we're definitely going to look to target. Next game on the docket, we got Pacers going into Chicago to take on the Bulls. Indiana, we do not have a line on this game, sorry. Looks like, Brogdon is questionable, TJ Warren is questionable, Oladipo is questionable, so that's likely why we do not have a line on this game or a total. Nonetheless, Indiana coming in as the 14th fastest team over their last 10. Chicago is 17th. Interesting game here. Two teams who typically do not play with a lot of pace, but they have here recently. Definitely be interesting to see which, if any of those guys happen to sit for the Pacers. Obviously, could be some potential value there. Game number six, we're going to go with the Magic in Minnesota in a nice little pace-up spot against the Wolves. Orlando comes in as a 2.5 point road favorite, 232.5 on the total. Orlando running with the 13th fastest pace over their last 10 games. If you guys caught that last slate where I bet the Magic and the Heat over, the Magic were running with the 10th fastest pace on that slate, and now they are 13th. Minnesota, of course, is number one. They are the fastest team in the league. Yeah, it's a really nice pace-up spot here for Orlando. This game should have really good pace, and I like the over in this game. The T-Wolves are not playing a lot of defense. The Magic obviously have given up over 100 points in a couple, their last 5 or 6 games as well. So, like the over in this game. I like the game. I think it's a nice game to stack. A couple of more games here. We have the Grizz going into Dallas to take on the Mavericks. We do not have a line. Luka is questionable. Tim Hardaway Jr. is questionable. Dorian Finney-Smith is questionable. Obviously, lots of information and news that we're going to have to wait on in this game because obviously this is going to be also another high-paced game. We have the Memphis coming in as the 7th fastest team over their last 10. We have Dallas ranked 12th or 11th. So 2 teams right there hanging inside the top 10 almost. Dallas right outside at the 11th ranked pace. Should be a really nice fast-paced game here. A lot of stuff to like in it, obviously. 2 games left. Blazers at the Suns. Another game that could potentially be a shootout. Not a lot of defense played between these 2 teams. Blazers heading out to the desert. Portland minus 1.5 here on the road. Do not have a total. I guess they're waiting to see if Dame Lillard is going to play on a back-to-back. I'm not really sure. But I do anticipate this game to have a total probably in the 230s. So nice one there. And then of course your nightcap, the late night hammer. The Bucks going into LA to take on the Lakers should be the game of the night, as far as big name teams here. Bucks at the Lakers. Milwaukee coming in as a small 1.5 point road favorite here. The Lakers being a home dog catching points. 225.5 on the total. Milwaukee coming in as the 4th fastest team, and the Lakers are the 9th over their last 10 games. So obviously another 2 teams inside the top 10. This slate has lots of goodness. I mean, you have a bunch of teams that are very fast, nice big totals, and really good, really good spots. Let's go ahead and hop into it. Of course, at the point guard spot, Luka Doncic. Of course, if he plays, he is 11.3 on DraftKings. This is a fast-paced game against Memphis, so it is a great spot. Memphis is allowing the 6th most of that point guard spot over the last 10 games, so obviously we know that it's a good spot for Luka. 73 last game. Fantasy points against New Orleans at home. You could probably already guess that, being against New Orleans. 37 more minutes in his last 4, carrying around a 33% usage rate over his last 5 and last game. Luka is Luka. If he plays, he's one of the youngest guys to record so many triple doubles. He's just really good. Trae Young at 9.9, probably one of the few times you will see him under 10K, especially against a team that runs with a pace kind of like Washington. Not really sure where this price came from because I believe he should probably be at least 10.5. Washington, of course, is allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to that point guard spot over the last 10 games. Got a nice big 246 total on this one. Over 52 fantasy points in his last 3 of 4 on the road, carrying a 32% usage rate in his last 5 as well. Obviously, great spot here for Trae in Washington in a really, really fast-paced game. Highest total on the board. Carrying a really nice usage, and he's only 9.9. So, Lonzo Ball at 7.8, over 50 fantasy points in his last 3 straight. 12 total steals over his last 4 games. 5 total blocks over those 5 as well. He's put up 19, 26, and 25 actual in his last 3. Lonzo has been playing pretty good. Got to give him some props there. This game has a 236 total, and it's only a 1.5 point spread here. So, definitely could see this game being a lot of back and forth, a lot of possessions. Really like the spot here for Lonzo. His price is starting to creep up there, so you might as well go ahead and jump while you can. Ricky Rubio, I think, is somebody that nobody will probably play once again because nobody ever plays Rubio. Gets a really good spot here against the Blazers. We know Portland is bad against the guard spot. It's going to be a nice, fast-paced game here. He has put up 39, 49, and 46 in his last 3 of 4 at home. He's put up a double-double in his last 5 of 6 with assists. He's scored 36 or more fantasy points in his last 6 of 7 games. Rubio was on a tear there for a minute and then kind of had a dud game, then kind of came back and bounced back really nicely. They've had a day or 2 off, so they're nice and rested. Really like Ricky Rubio at the price at 7.1 against Portland. They've struggled against the point guard spot, especially with Dame in there. Love the spot here for Rubio. Elfrid Payton at 6.4, 42 fantasy points last game there against Utah, over 41 now in his last 3 of 5 games, 28 or more minutes in his last 3 or 4 as well. Gets a nice little spot here against OKC at home. Decent total on that game. Okay, I lied. It's 217.5. It's one of the lowest ones we have. It is Elf. He is 6.4. He is a starter. He is going to play good minutes. Um, it is against OKC at home, so he does have a home field advantage here. Don't mind it. 42 fantasy points last game. Like I said, over 41 now in his last 3 of 5. Been putting up good numbers. Kobe White should probably likely be chalked once again with Zach LaVine looking to miss about a week. LaVine, of course, has missed last game. Kobe White has been playing lots of minutes, carrying a team leading 29.1% usage rate over his last 5 games. 35 or more fantasy points in his last 4 or 5 at home. 35 or more also in his last 6 of 7 overall. Kobe White been playing really good. Gets a decent spot, not the greatest here. If Malcolm Brogdon sits, it'll be even better, especially, of course, Depot as well. That would be probably best case for Kobe. Nonetheless, at 6.3, we know he's going to play the minutes. He's been putting up good numbers, and he's back at home. I say back at home. He's been at home. Nonetheless, good spot. Almost 30% usage rate over his last 5 games. Yep, definitely going to have to look at Kobe White at 6.3. Goran Dragic at 5.9. He's been playing really well. 31 or more fantasy points in his last 5 of 7. Over 37 fantasy points in his last 3 of 6. Of course, New Orleans is alone the fifth most. Sorry. New Orleans is alone the 5th most of that point guard spot over their last 10. Really nice pace-up spot here, of course, from the Magic, or Miami, Lord. 24.7% usage rate on his last 5 games, sorry. So, leads the team in that regard. 24.7% over his last 5 this is road. Yeah, road games. Sorry. I'll get right here in a minute, guys. I apologize. 24.7% usage rate over his last 5 road games, which leads the team. There we go. All right. Dragic at 5.9, decent look. Dejounte Murray at 5.8 has been playing good again. He's kind of coming back up, trending upwards. Over 40 fantasy points in his last 4 of 6 on the road. 22.4% usage rate in those 5 games on the road as well. Brooklyn allowing the 5th most to the point guard spot on the season. Of course, LMA is still out. 28 or more minutes in his last 2 of 3 is encouraging stuff. He's been picking it up with LMA out. Looks like he's actually been gaining most of the usage that we thought DDR would get. Nonetheless, he's 5.8. He's fairly cheap. It's not the greatest spot here, but I don't mind it. Dejounte Murray at 5.8 on the road. He's been playing pretty good on the road lately, so I'll take that. Mike Conley at 5.4 is still super cheap. His price really hadn't gone up much. 28 or more fantasy points in his last 4 straight. 15 or more actual, 6 or more assists, over 30 minutes in his last 3 or 4 as well. And Boston is allowing the 2nd most to the point guard spot over their last 10. So Mike Conley going into Boston tonight. He's cheap. I mean, it's really good. The DVP is there. They're obviously looking to maybe play Kemba, which is good news, I think, because he could be somewhat limited, and don't mind it. Dante DiVincenzo at 4.8. If George Hill sits once again, this would be good news for him. 25.4% usage rate last game. Played 23 minutes, put up 41 fantasy points against Indiana. Put up 19 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block. The guy can fill the sheet up when he gets minutes. He just doesn't really get minutes. So if George Hill sits once again, he will likely play the backup point guard spot. Good news, good stuff there at 4.8. Not the greatest against the Lakers, but it's a pace-up game, and you got to lock the spot here. Could be seeing a lot of, Rajon Rondo or, so don't mind Dante DiVincenzo there if George Hill is in fact out. Tyus Jones has played really good over the last couple of games. Just had to throw it in here. He's 4.2. Dallas is alone the 10th most of the point guard spot over the last 10. He's put up 36 and 38 fantasy points over his last 2, while only playing 19, 21, and 27 minutes over his last 3 games. 6 and 9 assists and 15 and 18 actual. Been putting up, good assist numbers, scoring well over double figures over his last couple. So Tyus Jones obviously could get some blowout run if Memphis does not come and show up to play. So he's 4.2, about as cheap as I'd go at the point guard spot. Moving over to the shooting guard, Brad Beal, of course, at 10.4. Atlanta, allowing the 2nd most of that shooting guard spot over the last 10. It's a great spot for Beal once again. 38 minutes or more in his last 6 of 8 games. Last 6 of 7. My fault. Playing loads of minutes. His usage rate is close to 38%. in one game versus Atlanta already on the season. He put up 40 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, and a steal. So, yeah, about 50 fantasy points. Yeah, I mean, Brad Beal at 10-4, I think is just an extremely bad price. Devin Booker at 8-4, Portland against shooting guards. Really like the backcourt here for Phoenix. We know that that's just one of the biggest Achilles heel of this Portland team is their defense against guards. Really like Rubio, really like Booker, both at their price. I think it's fine. Obviously, Rubio much cheaper. Nonetheless, Booker, 44 or more fantasy points in his last 2 of 3, 37 or more. My apologies there. My alarm clock was starting to go off. Again, Booker, Portland versus shooting guards, 44 or more in his last 2 of 3, 37 or more minutes in his last 4 straight. A shade under 28% usage rate over his last 5 games at 27.5%. So Devin Booker, he's due for one of those big games, and this could absolutely be that game. Jimmy Butler also in a pace-up spot here in New Orleans, 7.9 on DraftKings, 35 or more in his last 3 or 4 games on the road, 4 total steals over his last 4, 6 or more rebounds, 7 or more assists in his last 3. Jimmy Butler has not been the upside guy that we hoped he would be, but nonetheless, putting in this setting, going into New Orleans, really fast-paced game, totally fine with some Jimmy Butler if you want to go there. Donovan Mitchell at 7.7, 40 or more fantasy points in his last 5 of 6, 38 or more in his last 3 on the road, 34.4% usage rate in his last 5 games, 33 or more minutes a game. Donovan Mitchell, price is right. It is in Boston. Jaylen Brown is out, so he could get the Marcus Smart treatment. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but nonetheless, the usage has been there. He's been playing really well. He's been really good on the road. Donovan Mitchell at 7.7, I'm totally fine with. Karis LeVert at 7K obviously leads the team in usage over their last 5 games at 31.2%. He's put up 60 or more in 2 of his last 5. 30, 39, 43, 40, and 46 fantasy points in his last 5 games at home. Been playing really well at home, so LeVert, a lot of people, might jump off because he had a dud last game after he put up the 60-pointer, but he plays a lot better at home. So Karis LeVert at 7K, I'm totally fine with going back at. It is the Spurs, so fine with that. Marcus Smart at 6.5. Utah allowing the number 1 most fantasy points to the shooting guard spot. Marcus Smart will likely start at the shooting guard with Kemba starting at the 1. 48 and 52 fantasy points in his last 2 at home. Over 31 now in his last 7 of 8 games. 44 fantasy points last game in Utah. So Marcus Smart, definitely a nice look there. Malik Beasley at 5.9 for the Wolves, 33 or more minutes in his last 7 of 9 games. Over 31 fantasy points in 7 of 11 games since joining the Wolves. Orlando allowing the 6th most to the shooting guard spot over the last 10 games. So Malik Beasley, I think, is one that could go underlooked. It is a decent spot here. Orlando has run with some pace lately, so this game, again, I said I like the over in this game. I still do. And Malik Beasley is definitely an option that I really like. Terrence Ross is also on the flip side of this game. Been playing really well. Put up 35 actual points last game. 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals. Only just put up 35 points. But, I mean, he shoots a lot of threes, so on DraftKings, he, still put up close to 40 fantasy points. Been really good. Gets Minnesota defense here. Pace up spot. 35 or more fantasy points in his last 4 or 5 games. Over 20 actual in his last 5 of 6. The guy's been shooting the lights out. 24.7% usage rate, only behind second highest over their last 5 games, only behind Vucevic. So, Terrence Ross playing really well. Seth Curry at 5.7. 35, 38, and 46 actual. No, I'm sorry. Over his last 3, fantasy point wise, my fault. 35, 38, 36 fantasy points. Actual, he has put up 21, 27, and 37 actual points over his last 3. Memphis, pace up spot here in Dallas. Good spot for Curry, 5-7 if you want to go there. RJ Barrett, 5.5. Really thought he was going to kill my drill last game, or last slate that I had done the quick bricks. I think it was 2 nights ago. Had him as my cover. Got off to an awfully slow start, and then still ended up with 28 fantasy points. He was only about 5,800, so he hit right around value. Obviously, was looking for more. He had just had a 42-pointer the game before, so maybe I was chasing a little bit. Nonetheless, 28 or more in his last 5 of 6 fantasy point-wise. OKC allowing the 8th most to that shooting guard spot over their last 10 games. 23.4% usage rate in his last 5 as well, 30 or more minutes in his last 5 of 6. So RJ Barrett still playing really well, getting good minutes, getting the usage, and should continue to. He is their young guy. He's their young stud. I like it at 5.5. His price dropped a little bit. Don't mind it against OKC at home. Daylon Wright at 4.2. Looks like Brunson's out. Barea is questionable. Curry is now starting at the shooting guard spot. So Daylon Wright is the guard off of the bench to have and to own. 4.2. Played 26 and 28. No, sorry, 25, 27, and 32 minutes over his last 3. 26 and 28 fantasy points in 2 of those 3. So if you catch him on a good night, he could definitely really exceed the value of that 4.2 price tag. Obviously, a nice pace-up spot here with Memphis at home. So Daylon Wright at 4.2, totally fine with. A punt guard, if you want to go there, is Justin Jerome Robinson for Washington. Let's go with Jerome. Pretty sure that's his name. 3.2K, has played 20 or more minutes in his last 5 straight. Ish is out. Ish Smith for Washington. He started last 2 games, I believe. 17 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 5. Has been getting decent run. It is a nice little pace-up spot against Atlanta. Atlanta has struggled against the shooting guard spot. So Jerome Robinson at 3.2, if you want to go there, I'm totally fine. Small forward, LeBron James, 10.9, 59 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 4. Obviously, gets a nice pace-up spot with the Bucks coming to town. Over 50 fantasy points in his last 4 at home. So LBJ, I don't really have to extend. We already know he's really good. Really like him and AD both tonight. So Brandon Ingram at 8K, flat. 38 or more in his last 4 of 5 at home. Over 38 fantasy points in his last 2 of 3. 27.2% usage rate over his last 5. Just a shade right there under Zion. 36 or more minutes in his last 3 as well. So he's playing big minutes. Usage is back up there again. Brandon Ingram has been one of my dudes all season. Don't love the price, but I don't mind him. Bojan Bogdanovic for Utah going into Boston. 28, 49, and 33 fantasy points over his last 3. He plays 33 or more minutes a game. Over 21 actual in his last 3 as well. 15 or more field goal attempts in all 3 of those as well. So that's what he does. He's a shooter. He's going to shoot. Hopefully he can pull down a few rebounds, maybe dish a dime or 2, grab a steal. But if he gets hot shooting, you saw he put up almost a 50. He put up a 50 burger almost. So Bojan Bogdanovic seems to be trending upward, getting a little hotter, getting warmer, I should say. So at 6K, if you want to go there, nice tournament play. TJ Warren is questionable. Chicago is allowing the number 1 most to that small forward spot over their last 10 games. He has put up 36 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 4 on the road, carrying a 24.3% usage rate over his last 5 road games, which leads the team. So TJ Warren, if he is in, I believe nobody will probably play him, but it is a good spot against Chicago, and they are allowing tons of fantasy points to that small forward spot. Mikal Bridges at 5.2 for Phoenix. 29 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 4 at home. 29 or more in his last 3 or 4 on overall. Pace-up spot here, of course, with Portland defense coming to town. 37 more minutes last 4. Of course, with Oubre out, he's going to continue to see heavy minutes. The minutes will be there. Just got to get the production, which he's had. 29 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 4 is good stuff. He's been over 30 numerous times, so I think there's value there, obviously. Good spot against Portland defense. Joe Harris at 5K flat. San Antonio is allowing the 3rd most of that small forward spot over their last 10. 29 or more minutes in his last 5 of 6. 29 or more fantasy points in his last 3 of 4. Joe Harris, one of those streaky guys, but man, once he gets to hitting shots, it's all over. A guy, who can typically fill the sheet a little bit, couple rebounds, couple assists, steal or 2. Good stuff at 5K for Joe Harris if you want to go there. San Antonio, the DVP's there. DeAndre Hunter at 4.9 for Atlanta. Washington defense, of course, coming to town. Over 30 fantasy points in his last 5 of 7, over 30 minutes a game. The value is decent, under 5K still. We know that Washington is not that great on defense. It's going to be a really fast-paced game, and he's put up over 30 fantasy points in his last 5 of 7. Don't mind DeAndre Hunter. Josh Jackson for Memphis at 4.5K. 23 or more in his last 3 of 4. Fantasy point-wise, Dallas, of course, is allowing the 4th most of that small forward spot over their last 10 games. Nice pace-up game here. 17 or more minutes in and I can't even read what I wrote there. Nonetheless, Josh Jackson is just your ultimate tournament play. We've seen him put up decent numbers. He's put up fair amounts of fantasy points. He hasn't been playing consistent minutes, but the minutes have been there, so totally fine with Josh Jackson at 4.5K. Shaquille Harrison, if you want to punt some more, 29 minutes last game, put up 31 fantasy points. 22 and 29 minutes in his last 2 of 4, over 22 fantasy points in his last 2 of 4. Chicago is still without Chris Dunn. There looks like Chandler Hutchinson is not returning yet. Denzel Valentine is still kind of in the wings there ways. So if you want to go with Shaq, I think I don't know. It's a punt. Last but not least, Justin Holiday in a revenge game against Chicago. In Chicago, if TJ Warren happens to sit, you could get Justin Holiday at 3.4K, who will likely play 25 to 30 minutes. In 3 games so far versus Chicago this season, he's averaged 27 minutes a game. He's averaged 9 points, 2.7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 0.6 steals. So I think there's nice value there. Even if TJ does play, I think he could probably still play in the low 20s. So I think he's done actually decently well, obviously, in these revenge spots against Chicago. So Justin Holiday at 3.4 if you want to go there. Going over to the power forward spot, Giannis at 11.2. Obviously, if you're stacking that Laker game or playing that, you got to play some Giannis. Obviously, the blowouts have been killer to his production lately, but I don't see this game being a blowout. It's a 1.5 point spread here and a 226 total. So Giannis at 11.2 I think is completely fine. 55 or more fantasy points in his last 4 of 5, 61 or more in his last 2 of 3 on the road. Jason Tatum at 10K, over 50 fantasy points in his last 7 straight. Obviously no Jalen, no Hayward. 32.7% usage rate over his last 5 games, 36 or more minutes in his last 6 of 7. The guy's been playing absolutely lights out. How AD is $200 cheaper than Tatum, I'm not really sure, but we will take it. Milwaukee is allowing the 6th most to that power forward spot over their last 10. This is going to be a huge pace-up game for the Lakers. 71 fantasy points last game versus Philadelphia, sorry. 71, 58, 57, and 67 over his last 4 at home. I believe there's lots of value there at that 9.8 price tag. Aaron Gordon at 8.6. Minnesota allowing the number 1 most fantasy points to the power forward spot. Played 35 minutes last game, I believe. He's played 36 or more minutes in his last 6 of 7. He's had 4 double-doubles in his last 6 games. 35 or more fantasy points in his last 7 of 8. Nice 236 total on that game. John Collins at 8.5. I think nobody might play. I say that, but it is Washington. Over 46 fantasy points in his last 3 of 4. Put up a dud last game in 2 games versus the Washington Wizards this season so far. He's averaged right around 26 minutes a game. 15.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, and 2.5 blocks. So decent numbers. Pace-up spot here. It's a great spot at home, I guess, if you want to go there. Sorry, it's on the road in Washington. Julius Randle at 7.6, over 41 fantasy points in his last 4, over 38 in his last 8 of 9 games, over 30 minutes in his last 4 straight, 6 double-doubles in his last 8 games. Julius Randle has been playing really well. Danilo Gallinari at 6.1, New York allowing the 3rd most of that power forward spot over their last 10, 39, 33, 38, 32, and 31 in his last 5 road games, 29 or more minutes in all but 2 games. Gallo is your ultimate cash play. Davis Bertans at 5.6, love the price. The guy's been trending upwards. He's been shooting a lot better. 36, 32, and 39 fantasy points over his last 3. He's put up 21, 18, and 29 actual in those 3. 4 more rebounds, 3 blocks, 3 steals, 23.7% usage rate in his last 3, only behind Bill. Good stuff for Davis Bertans there at 5.6. Really like the spot. Thad Young at 5.6, still played 29 minutes even with Mark Kaechning coming back. Gets a revenge spot here against Indiana at home, if you remember. Over 31 fantasy points in his last 6 of 7, so good stuff for Thad. Trey Lyles at 5.1 has been starting at the center spot. He's power forward center eligible on DraftKings. 33 and 37, 40 minutes over his last 3, so 33 or more minutes in his last 3 games. Yeah, Caperto is still out. LMA is still out. He's going to continue to start. He's going to continue to play heavy minutes, and hopefully everybody will have forgot after he put up that dud last game of 17 fantasy points. And won't remember that he put up the 35 and 45 the 2 prior games before that dud. So hopefully lower ownership. going to continue to start, and he's starting against Brooklyn, who we know has struggled against the center spot. Trey Lyles at 5'1", I'm a big fan. James Johnson at 4'9", has only been playing 21 to 24 minutes per game, but he's put up 27 or more fantasy points in his last 4 or 5. He gives you about 3 to 6 rebounds, 4 to 5 assists. He's got 6 total steals over his last 5 and 6 total blocks. So he's filling up the sheet. If he played 30 minutes, he would literally probably score 30-plus fantasy points a night easily. But at 4'9", he's still been really, really consistent. So if you want to go there, totally fine. Bobby Portis at 4.5. If Mitch Robinson happens to sit again, he sat last game, and Bobby Portis played 30 minutes, and he put up 29 fantasy points. So keep in mind, if Mitch Robinson sits, you can definitely look at Bobby Portis. Shimmy Holloway for Boston played 30 minutes last game, put up 37 fantasy points. He was the guy to get the most of the run with those guys out. I would imagine that with Hayward still out, Brown still out, he will still should probably see another start and probably play big heavy minutes. So if you want to go there, I'm totally fine. Moving to the center spot where I don't really like all that much, Kristaps Porzingis at 9'3". He's going to top it and probably be my favorite center play easily. I really like Vucevic as well, but KP has just been so good, especially if Luka happens to sit. He's going to see over 30% usage, over 50 fantasy points in his last 6 of 7. Gets a nice pace up here with Memphis, of course, at home. 37 more minutes his last 3 is very encouraging. 29.1% usage rate over his last 5 as well. So KP, love the spot. It's a great thing. Vucevic, Minnesota, allowing the 4th most of that center spot over the last 10. Vucevic gets a nice pace-up spot here against the number 1 fastest team in the league. He's only 8.9. He's playing well over 30 minutes a game. He's put over 40 fantasy points in his last 3 or 4 on the road. 23.5% usage rate in his last 5 games on the road, which leads the team. Good stuff for Vucevic there. Really like Vucevic in this spot. Bam Adebayo, of course, in a pace-up spot here against New Orleans. New Orleans is allowing the 6th most of that center spot over their last 10. His last 7 road games have gone like this: 65, 70, 42, 45, 41, 50, 42. He's played over 31 minutes a game in his last 5 of 6 games. Bam at 8.2, I think, has a lot of value. Naz Reid at 5'8 has been playing extremely well. 27, 47, and 42 fantasy points in his last 3 games. 25, 27, and 27 minutes. So 25 or more minutes in his last 3. And a couple of 40-pointers. 20.6% usage rate over those last 3. It's really good stuff for Naz Reid there. Gorgie Dejang at 5K has seemed like he's gotten more of the run on the road lately over Val. 27 and 35 fantasy points in his last 2 back-to-back double-doubles. He's played 21 or more minutes in his last 3 or 4 as well. So Gorgie Dejang at 5K, if you want to go there, I'm totally fine. Last but not least, Brook Lopez at 4'7", going against the Lakers. Gets a nice pace-up spot here, of course. He's not in the pace-up spot, of course. I guess it's going to be a nice pace game. Decent total. 32, 33, and 33 fantasy points in his last 3 or 4 road games. 26 or more minutes in his last 3 or 4 games as well. So Brook Lopez, I'm totally fine if you want to punt down a little bit and play in that spot. So that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast. Enjoy your Friday, folks.